Welcome back to the Kelowna Real Estate Podcast. I'm your mortgage broker host, Taylor Atkinson.
And I'm your real estate agent host, Matt Glenn. What's happening today, Taylor? What's up? What's down?
Yeah, good question. Do you have any stocks right now? If you do, you probably had a heart attack for about 2 days and now you're fine. Everything's fine.
Well, like you get a little surge. Like we're recording this, what day is this? Wednesday the 9th at 1:30 in the afternoon. So this morning there was a huge bump because of another tariff announcement, which I don't think affected Canada. I think we still have all the same tariffs. But there's markets just go crazy. So like, is now a time to sell when it's on a bit of a high? Like, who knows what is going on here?
Definitely don't listen to us if you have stocks to buy and sell. But I guess let's rewind this about a week. Right, a week ago, Trump basically imposed tariffs globally on a global scale to an absolute ton of countries. And it was exposed, I guess, the way he was calculating the tariffs were not correct, right? It was just basically based on trade deficit and then used a multiplier and used like the higher of the two. So some countries were getting absolutely hammered. Vietnam, I think, was like a 49% tariff, which is insane. So Shoe Dog, Phil Knight, Nike book, whoever hasn't read it, you should read it. It's a great book, but it outlined in that book a couple times that they had to like move countries, and he was like over in Japan and then had to like move it into like Southeast Asia, and like because of these type of international agreements. But I mean, Nike gets a ton of their materials and assembly from Vietnam. So like Nike's stock just absolutely plummeted, right? Like a lot of other stocks, but because of this, because of those imposed tariffs. And then today, you know, Trump has, I guess, repositioned some of those tariffs and is coming to some other agreements. So it's just like the volatility is impossible to keep up with in this market.
The goal is to onshore jobs to the US, but like who is going to spend hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on a factory when the things change every single day? And not to mention, like, you're kind of selecting for like not the greatest jobs to come back. I think a lot of people are kind of realizing like globalization is probably not entirely the worst thing, you know, in all this.
I think in the long term, if it was like a really subtle plan that was like, you know, spanned over 50 years to bring jobs back to America, it's not like the worst strategy, but to do it like this in just one foul swoop is insanity.
As of today, he increased tariffs to China to 125%. Like, you just got to think of a business like Amazon or Walmart. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's got to be like at least 75% of everything in both of those places comes from China.
Yeah.
So like, that is a massive amount. Like everything's doubled 1.5 times or 1.25 times is expensive.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does a lot of things, right? It increases the cost of those goods, but then it also hurts the economy, GDP. Like, you know, people aren't going to be spending as much money. So, you know, jobs are going to be at a loss. It's just going to compound. But one of the interesting posts I saw, this was a couple of days ago. Obviously, it's probably back up to normal now, but Elon Musk lost like 130 billion or whatever it was. It was like a third of his net worth.
Yeah, billion.
Yeah, over the span of like a couple of days. And he was, you know, one of Trump's biggest supporters. So it's like, those guys can't be super happy about this either, can they? Who knows? Maybe like he sold and then bought back in the day before.
Well, I was trying to think like last night, I'm like, who is winning? It just seems like there isn't anybody besides like people like taking like political points that is actually happy about this. Like, it just seems like everyone's mad about it.
Yeah.
It just feels like a lose-lose. It's like, is there someone making a lot of money? I guess if you're betting on market fluctuations, probably make some money right now, but like, just crazy. And then how it affects us, like, is the real estate market going to come roaring back when these tariffs are eventually pulled off? Or like, is the damage done? Like, is it slow? Like, is the uncertainty just kill it? Like, how does this affect selling houses in Kelowna?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there. I don't even think like the uncertainty anymore. Like, people are like, whatever, they're probably over it, but they're not so worried about the uncertainty of like the market. They're probably just uncertain about their jobs. You know, like the economy is going to really suffer on this. But to talk about like interest rates, so, you know, the bond market's been incredibly volatile because of this.
Yes.
But, you know, we saw a little bit of a dip on some fixed rates and then back up. They're moving, but they're somewhat stagnant just because no lender is going to change their rate based on a Trump announcement that lasts for a day. Like you just can't do business that way. What we are seeing though, are variable rate discounts are shrinking. So, a couple months ago, like on an insured mortgage, let's just say like prime minus 1.15. And then last month was prime minus 1, and now it's prime minus 0.85. So that discount that clients were getting is starting to shrink, which is unfortunate, but it's what lenders do on these type of times that are, I guess, more risk on their money, right? Because they're expecting Bank of Canada is going to lower rates too, but it's just overly volatile. So they got to protect the risk a little bit and have that margin. So if you had a variable rate a few months ago, awesome. You have that discount. Bank of Canada makes cuts. You're in a great position. If you were going to go variable in the next couple months, you might have to start to reanalyze now just because of the discount starting to shrink. So,
like just in my business, I think uncertainty is kind of ruling the day right now. I don't anymore. I have one still, but I had 3 listings, all had accepted offers subject to sale, which is like kind of funny. It feels like people want to move, but there's nobody like bookending the transactions, right? Like the first time home buyers, whoever it is buying the house. Everyone has a house to sell. And then the development properties I've had like a lot of people, I think 4 now, reach out wanting to either the seller to finance the sale or like remain a partner in the project. So it's just like people are just looking like almost more creatively, right? Like, it's not as black and white, and it's kind of funny, interesting.
I mean, I think this has kind of been our narrative for the last little while is single family homes are just going to become scarce.
Oh yeah.
They're going to increase in value just purely because no one can afford to build them right now. And, a lot of that comes back to our own government with, being able to subdivide and just like the cost of land and infrastructure for that land. But now with tariffs, like the cost to build is a huge unknown. So what builder is going to go out and do a 50 lot subdivision when their margins 12%, their 12% profit could now be a 12% loss.
That 12% profit is literally a tweet away from not existing.
Totally. So like if you're a developer, why would you even bother at this point? If you're a homeowner that wants to build, or like, somebody that wants to have some land and build their dream house, it's like, is it going to be 1.4 million or 1.8 million to build? Like, you just don't know. That's too much of a gamble. So I don't think single family houses are really going to get the traction. And our guest today, Troy Froese, he's a home builder. They do it all in, design, GC, help with a lot of different type of projects. Really good resource. Great guy to reach out to if you have anything on the go right now. Anywhere from just, medium-sized renovation to a new build. But those are the guys that are going to be, penciling this stuff in as soon as possible. But I guess without any real information, like what do you do? Everyone's just kind of a standstill.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great talking to Troy, though. A knowledgeable guy doing it himself. He brought a lot to the table.
Yeah. So he kind of touches on the best things and the worst things you can do when doing a renovation or a new build. Yeah. Reach out to him if you have any questions, and enjoy the show, guys.
And this episode, like every other episode, is sponsored by Century 21 Assurance Realty, best brokerage in town, best brokerage in the Okanagan. We're growing in Kelowna, Vernon, Kamloops, Kootenays. We're here. So if you're an agent looking for a new place to land, or a buyer or seller looking for an agent, give us a shout. Love to talk to you.
Okay. Welcome to the Kelowna Real Estate Podcast. Troy, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks. We like to start our show with just, what does your perfect Friday look like other than being in my house doing a renovation? Yeah. What do you?
Yeah. So is this a lunch hour? Or is that was going?
Yeah. Am I getting billed for this? Yeah.
Of course it's billable.
Yeah. So Troy and his crew, they are helping out with the renovation on the other side of the house. So can speak highly of them. Let's dive into the show and what's your Friday look like?
Yeah, usually try to be up early. Got a young one, so hit and miss depending on the night before, but usually try to get up before her and have a bit of time to get some emails and critical stuff out of the way first thing. And then I usually try to free my morning up to spend time with her and my wife. Take it a little bit slower till probably about 9-10, and then head out to, check on all of our sites and that type of thing. So yeah, if it's Friday, then usually back to the office, try to wrap some things up, kind of tie up the loose ends before the weekend. And then in an ideal world, that's wrapping up early, but as it goes, into the end of Friday, really just wind down, spend some time with the family, maybe try to do a barbecue or something like that, and yeah, just kind of set up for the weekend.
Sweet. The whole approach of the show is kind of like expectations of clients, how you communicate, how do you kind of set people up for success in the initial stages, right? Because I feel like a lot of people in Kelowna want to do renovations, additions, basement suites. They want to add value to their home, but where do you start? So you kind of came up with the idea of, top 5 best things and 5 worst things. So yeah, maybe if we want to go through that.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of behind the scenes that's kind of important to think about when you're getting started. I think getting a good team in place, that's really critical. This is my perspective, but when you start to work with a client, you're setting that relationship up and it's not, just 2 weeks. That's a working relationship. And you want to make sure that everybody aligns when it comes to expectations, as well as even, kind of down to personality and how you work together that way.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I will say, like, your communication's been awesome. You definitely have composure that's just nice. Like, it seems like you're in control and there's no stresses, so it makes
Appreciate
it easier
that.
for the client. But yeah, I know shit hits the fan once in a while, and yeah, you handle it well. So obviously that's having your team in place.
Yeah.
Next, you were talking about is set up like a realistic budget with a contingency. So how does pricing look? Obviously, like cost plus is part of the program.
Yeah, so that's typically how we would run most of our projects, would be from a cost plus model. I feel that that's often kind of the best value for the client. We could do a fixed price, but in that, then maybe things are padded to make sure that, some of those unexpecteds are after, whether or not they, end up showing up. So I find that if you approach it from a cost plus, then the client ends up getting what they want. They get the value for the time and energy that's been put into the project. Oftentimes I hear, if somebody's on a fixed price, then some people can be a little bit more quick to try to cut a corner or that sort of thing to, increase the profit margin, which that's not something that we like to stand by.
Yeah.
We like to be transparent and make sure that, the client is getting the, like I said, best value for what they're paying for.
Yeah. And I guess, we're talking about like an overall approach, but like renovations compared to new builds, obviously renovations got to be pretty tough to quote because you don't know what you're going to get when you open up the walls. Do you have a preference on like what you like to work on?
We do a little bit of both. I probably enjoy new construction a little bit more. There are kind of less of those kind of the unexpecteds. That being said, as soon as you start into the excavation, there's 100 things that you could run upon that, lead to other challenges throughout the build. So pick your challenges and go from there. But renovations are always fun, especially if they're a little bit more tricky. I like a good problem to solve.
If somebody's looking to renovate their house or do a new build, should you be the first call they make?
Yeah, between an architect, a designer, and your contractor, those should be the first people. And it would be good to have them all work kind of in sync. There's a lot of things that everybody brings to the table, and it can help, one, make a really good plan moving forward, but it can also help with the planning stages in terms of, if your designer and your contractor are working together, they can look at ways to make things more cost effective. There can be things that, as a contractor, we'll look at and go, if we just tweak the design a little bit this way, it's going to make, our plumbing or electrical, that much easier. And so it can make for a better overall product at the end and eliminate some of those, unexpecteds or, more expensive details that could come up in a project.
I guess that kind of segues into the next topic for you is invest in quality where it matters. So can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, there's lots of different products out there. The most expensive isn't necessarily the best. Usually where I would start with that is the areas that are good to really invest in are going to be, your touch point areas. So, if it's a new build, I would say, those areas where, you walk into the home, kind of what are the surfaces that you touch. So that could even be, stuff like your door handles, your front door. That's can be a big statement piece. You walk into your kitchen, that's, the heart of the home, as everybody says. So, yeah. Investing the money in those places, the primary bathroom, bedroom wing, I think that's another really good spot to kind of spend some money. And then just looking at really careful selections. I think bringing a designer into the picture can have a big impact on that because a good design with good quality products can really pull a project together and make or break it. Mm-hmm. Kind of comes down to client preference and what they value. I've had some clients where, they really want the best, most expensive, some really beautiful items, but those can be challenging when it comes to, thinking about maintenance down the road. What happens when, you've got a wall mounted faucet behind a very expensive piece of, quartz or something like that, eventually will need to be serviced and potentially replaced. So looking at kind of the long-term value of that. And some people value, maintenance free and ease of replacement and that sort of thing. Whereas, other people value kind of the aesthetic and finish more.
Yeah. The design part is, at least for me, I feel so overlooked, but like, thank God I have Emily that does a lot of the decision making on that. Do you inherently just become like a bit of a mediator, also like a third opinion of like, do you like green or do you like yellow? Like, what should we use for paint? And you're kind of stuck in between, like
all the time. Yeah.
Not in this house, but
no.
You threw it in the towel a long time ago.
I'm completely hands off. Yeah,
I have to. Just not a battle I'm willing to fight.
Yeah. Well, and my choices are
exactly.
awful, so.
Also, we're all better off.
Yeah. Totally. But I guess like. Is there at a certain point where you just say like, hey, you guys should get a designer. Here's who we like to work with.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that's something that I would usually chat with our clients right from the get-go. That would be one of the first things that we would discuss is there room in the budget for a designer? And one of the things that I'll say even with that is, a good designer can save you more than their fees throughout the course of a project when it comes to whether it be, delays in material selections, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. So having all those details really well planned out ahead of time can definitely help streamline that and save you in the long run. So that's something that at the beginning of a project, I usually do discuss that with a client and go, is that something you're open to? I mean, some projects, they just don't have the budget. And, if it's small enough or, straightforward enough, some clients, they know exactly what they want and there's just no need for the selection portion. And when it comes down to, your cabinetry and millwork and stuff like that, that's something I think it's always good to have a designer's input on.
Yeah.
But
Well, even just staying up with trends and options, it's a pretty fast paced industry when you look at, styles.
It's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Matt, talking about materials and stuff, have you felt the impact of tariffs at all yet on this? Are people choosing stuff made in Italy more than something made in Michigan?
Haven't seen that too much. I do anticipate that will be something that comes down quite fairly soon. A lot of building products are manufactured in the States. And so I do anticipate, some definite cost increases there.
Are we just going to have all of a sudden European style all over Canada?
Oh, cool.
Yeah. You know what?
That'd be kind of
never know.
Yeah.
But I was trying to price something out last week, aluminum railing product. And the supplier actually came back to me and said, listen, we'd love to get you pricing on this, but we don't know. So we'll be in touch in a week from now when we have a little bit better idea of what's going on. So
yeah,
that's gonna be a tough one.
Obviously, we're very fresh into this little game we're playing right now.
Yeah,
but I think we're gonna see a lot of weird things coming up that you don't really realize, like things you just take for granted.
Yeah, for sure.
Just gonna all of a sudden be obsolete. We're just gonna pivot. So
challenges with getting products and the price, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I have seen that a little bit here and there on a few different products where it's like what I could buy it for 3 months ago is drastically different than it is today.
It's funny because it's actually more than 25% because you think like the price was a price because they could just throw it on truck B that was coming to Canada. But now those trucks aren't coming to Canada. So now you get to pay for that truck to ship that one thing and then pay the 25%. So it's like some products are going to be way more than 25% more, right? So
I mean, I'm just thinking like on a smaller scale with homeowners that are like just breaking ground and they have their budget. Let's say even half of the material goes up by 25%. That's going to blow their budget out of the water. And then if you got a larger scale, like a developer that's, just pouring foundation on like a 50 unit place, even if 10% of those materials are coming, like how do you make it feasible?
Yeah, it's definitely a big concern that I've had looking out at kind of the future of our, housing market and economy and stuff like that in general. On $1 million build, 25% is a lot of money. Not everybody has that in their budget to, spend in addition to. So
I guess this is how things evolve though, right? Like if you look at the positive side of it, is like something like this comes out, people are going to find a different material or resource. It may be better.
Or like just buy the steel straight from Hamilton.
Yeah.
Like you almost need these high pressure situations that like, you know, backs up against the wall and then you find a better alternative solution. So
yeah, we even felt that in COVID. We started to have to look at alternative solutions, get creative with, you know, the products we were using and that sort of thing. It was actually really interesting because sometimes there were better quality products out there that became the more cost-effective options.
Yeah.
And so you were ending up with a better overall build. Obviously, we were still spending more, but at the end of the day, the cost between your traditional build versus, you know, going something a little bit different and getting creative ended up being the better way to go.
You know, like obviously this is not where we thought this conversation was going to go, but just like
never is.
But there seems like amazing opportunities for some Canadian manufacturers and producers to like fill these gaps, because like someone just breaking ground, like if you're doing 100 units, you're gonna need to buy what, like 400 faucets, right?
Yeah.
So like times that over everywhere, like man, that's a huge opportunity if you want to take advantage of it.
All right, put this on pause. We're going to go start a manufacturing company.
You're in my mind.
Yeah. The next topic was think about function and flow. So again, that probably comes back to like the design, you know, working with an architect.
Yeah, working with the architect and really kind of asking the questions like, you know, how am I going to use the space on a daily basis? But how is it going to be used, you know, 2-3 years down the road? Are you a growing family? Are there going to be more kids? Is there a need for a home office at some point? Recently had a client we helped with an addition, and that was one of the things they were looking to use it for, you know, their home business. They needed to create some extra space that way. And so that was kind of one of the things we discussed is, you know, well, we can size things and set it up so that it's, you know, very, you know, strictly business based, or we can, you know, make allowances for certain things so that down the road it's, you know, an easy conversion to a secondary suite, or, you know, it's just additional, you know, it's a nice flow to, you know, 2 or 3 additional bedrooms and a bathroom to your home. So it adds that square footage and value for you down the road when, you know, should you decide to sell, or, you know, you're not using it in that way anymore. So I think that's something that's really important. And a lot of people do overlook that, is they're like, you know, we want to do this and this is what it's for, but thinking about that future use, how are some of the ways that you might want to use it in the future, and what can you do to kind of make so that it's, you know, workable for those items as well, and also looking at, you know, potential resale.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that's where you'd tag in somebody like Matt, or real estate agent, to do a CMA and say like, you know, hey, comparables in this area, like if we added this extra bathroom, yeah, it's going to cost X for the client, but, you know, they are looking at moving in 5 years, you know, would that be a worthwhile investment? You know, so that's something good to look at.
Yeah, definitely.
And then your last one for best things to do would be plan for future maintenance and upgrades. I think that's a big one as well. Like you don't know the cost of things until like things start to break down on you.
Use an example of, you know, the type of decking that you use. You can go with better quality product that carries a warranty that's, you know, less prone to break down from UV and weather and stuff like that. Or you can, you know, spend a lot less and just do, you know, something with wood, that type of thing. But as we live in the Okanagan and it gets hotter and hotter every year, it seems, wood does not hold up very well. And so when you look at kind of over the next 10 years, what's your maintenance cost on, you know, this product versus spending a little bit more up front, but having something that's going to weather a lot better and has those warranties, those are always good things to kind of consider and look at and kind of weigh out.
Yeah. I love it.
I see that you have heated driveways here. What can you do to prepare for that?
It's a great question.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
You getting sick of shoveling? Or what?
No, I love shoveling. But we only had to shovel like once or twice this year.
Yeah, I think I only shoveled once this year.
I could have used at least 10 times that many.
Yeah, no, for sure. With that one in particular, when you're going through your rough-in stage, it would be applicable to both renovation and new construction, but kind of making those allowances, you know, things you have to consider there is there a power requirement for, you know, sensors and stuff like that? How are you going to get that stuff back into the home once it's completed? So having the room, you know, if you need to put in a boiler, running water lines and stuff like that. So if those are things as you're kind of working through that design phase where like, you know, maybe it's not in the budget right now, but, you know, down the road, we'd like to put in a gate, or, you know, we'd like to, you know, do a heated floor. We want to throw in a hot tub or a pool in the backyard. Looking at, you know, the things that you can do during construction to get things, you know, close to those areas so that it's roughed in, so that, you know, down the road, you're not having to tear your house apart or dig up, you know, your entire yard and driveway just to make allowances and install those items. It can save you immense.
Yeah. It's kind of funny thinking about houses from like 30 years ago. It seems like a long time ago, but not a lot has evolved in, you know, the use of a home. But in terms of like when you look at renovating a 30-year-old home, you're like, why did they ever do this? Like, why would a kitchen be enclosed? Like it seems like the trends change. So I'm curious now, in like 30 years, we're going to look back on this house and be like,
why is this kitchen open?
Oh my God. Yeah. Close the door. Yeah.
Who wants to see this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's get into the juicy part. So 5 worst things you can do with a renovation or build. First one you have listed, underestimating costs and timelines. I mean, isn't this just a given? Like, doesn't everyone underestimate?
Yeah.
Okay, underestimate. So you got to think you can do a kitchen for $5,000, bathroom for $2,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, heated driveway for what, $4,500?
Yeah,
$50,000
exactly.
to redo the whole.
Yeah, in an afternoon.
Yeah,
Yeah. So like that's got to be a tough conversation to have.
It can be. There's often a lot of sticker shock because there's a lot of items that, go into doing, a renovation or a new build that a lot of people, they're just not aware of. Let's say you're doing a renovation and you start, tearing out walls and stuff like that. Maybe you end up having to remove drywall in the ceiling to, rework your electrical. Now you're starting to trigger some code requirements. And that's just one kind of small example where when you start to touch stuff, pull it apart, well, now you have to actually bring it up to today's code. And there can be a lot that goes into kind of making those upgrades just to get you back to, let's say drywall stage where you can actually put your kitchen back together. Mm-hmm. So lots of items like that.
What do you kind of see difference in renovation cost to new build cost? If somebody's looking to pretty much, gut a house, rip down the drywall to the studs, is it going to be effectively the same cost just because the labor to get the demo done?
It depends on the bones of the house. I would say that there's some houses out there that you're better off to just bulldoze it. By the time you bring everything up to today's code and, bring it back to what you want, the total dollar figure will definitely be less than, building new. But if you look at the value add to your property over time, you can look at it's a, brand new house. It's got the warranty. It's got, new finishes. You're not going to be looking at needing a new roof anytime soon, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, even just on the resale side, like if you're listing a house that's brand new compared to like a 1970s house that has had like a great facelift, it's still on title a 1970s house with some components that are not fully updated.
Yeah. The struggle that I often see is people, they want to do the renovation, they find a really great location and, they're willing to spend the money on doing the renovation. But the thing that they run into is the older homes aren't designed in such a way that makes it cost effective to do the types of modifications that they want. If you've got, a very rectangular, 1970s build, trying to go in and, vault ceilings or, anything like that, it can be.
I would never want to do that.
What are you talking about? This isn't a 1970s house, by the way. Yeah. You told me it was a good idea.
I think it's a great idea, and I think there's a lot of value add. But, things like that, a lot of people have expectations for, a renovation that, in some cases just aren't achievable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just want to go back to this cost, like who you call first. So you call you first, and then you talk to a designer, you get plans drawn, an architect.
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways to do it. The way that we try to approach things with our client is we try to kind of be that, call it one-stop shop.
Yeah.
So you get in touch with us, then we'll coordinate. So I like to sit down and, have a really in-depth conversation with a client and go, okay, what is the vision for this project? What is it that you're looking to achieve? How can we help bring that together? And then from there, engaging, we work with a number of different architects. Everybody's got, different styles. Usually try to work with somebody that's going to be able to kind of bring the client's vision to life that way. Yeah. Oftentimes it'll end up being us engaging with the client and then sitting down and having those conversations together, because knowing from the get-go, how the client wants to use the space, some of the things that they want to, accomplish with it, can kind of streamline that. Then, I can have some conversations with the architect about, whether it be structural details or, moving walls, that sort of thing, what's feasible on the mechanical side of it, what sort of allowances do we need to make? And that can really help kind of bring, what's possible with the home kind of back to the client. Then from there, we can really put together a good game plan.
So like somebody calls you and says, I have $100,000 and I want to renovate X, Y, and Z. Talk to you, talk to the planner, get a plan, come back, and then you say, okay, this is going to cost like $140,000 to do this. Work with you to cut out $40,000 of that. Like, how does this process work to get the plan?
Seems like a very specific question. Okay, Matt is the client.
It's from experience. So I ran into this, and it's like, I've just never fully understood that part of it?
That's a tough question to answer. Put me on the spot here.
So I want 140,000 worth of a renovation.
Yeah.
But I don't want.
But you don't know, like the average person has no idea what $100,000 renovation is.
Yeah.
Right? Like, is that a kitchen? Like, honestly, in my experience, that's a kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Or is that a bedroom wing?
So usually I would kind of start off with like a really high level budget for them.
Yeah.
So we have a look at the space, kind of chat about what they want to do. I would put together something, really high level and say, you know what, if we want to move forward with this, then, let's actually do some deeper investigation. Let's have a look into, what's your electrical capacity in your home? If we're adding, another bathroom and, a bunch of extra lighting and that sort of thing, is that going to trigger the need for, a service upgrade? Is there stuff with your, septic? Again, adding bathrooms is a big one. Starting to add a whole bunch of fixtures. Do you have an outdated septic system that really, should be updated to connect it to city sewer?
Even like the water main. So we had to update the water main here.
Yeah.
Just because we were adding a bathroom. I was like, you kidding me? You're not going to use any more water.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like I did not anticipate that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we do our best to kind of cover all those bases. So our process would be engage with the client. Let's have a conversation. Let's understand, put together a really high level budget. Then at a very high level, we can kind of discuss, this is way more than we thought it was going to be. Where can we scale back? And then we start having those, conversations about, well, a lot of it's going to depend on the fixtures. These are, some of the things from, a code requirement and municipal requirements that are going to need to be done. So those are, things we can budge on. Working from there, whether it be reducing, cost of finishes, reducing the square footage in the areas that we're working with, and trying to kind of get into that ballpark.
Yeah, I'm just kind of laughing in my head because you guys ever watched Love It or List It?
Yeah.
Yeah, this seems like a Love It or List It thing. Like, Jeff wants to stay and he wants to renovate these 3 sections of the house, but they're over budget. So he's got to cut one. And which one is it going to be? I mean, I guess, it just comes down to that.
It is super expensive though. Like everything is.
Yeah. This is a good segue into your next point, is changing the scope midway through. How does that happen?
Often that can come from kind of a lack of a good plan. It could be anything from, we get started into something, we've put a plan together, we hope this never happens, but, maybe there was a different expectation between, what the client thought the space was going to look like if we made the certain changes. Or, it could be, maybe it is budgetary restraints. Let's say we did run across something that can be challenging because you need to stop, kind of take a step back and go, okay, well, what are the things that are going to be impacted here? What needs to be kind of reworked, taken apart, that sort of thing, so that we can, start to move forward. That can have huge budgetary repercussions, and it can also impact your schedule in a big way.
Yeah, I imagine time would be the biggest one, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then skimping on structural elements was number 3.
Yeah, that's not something that we would ever do.
Well, that's just going to throw everything off, right? Then like walls aren't squared.
Yeah.
Drywall's popping. Yeah, things just don't fit properly.
No, for sure.
And we're not saying you do any of these. These were just what clients. So the next one, which is obviously a no-no, ignoring permits and inspections.
Yeah.
I would assume like a lot of people that want to do like a small renovation would never think of a permit, right? Like,
it is shocking, actually. Some people just aren't aware. There's other people out there that it's a small project where, who's going to know sort of thing. And so those conversations can be kind of difficult because, oftentimes it comes down to kind of educating a client, you can do it without a permit. That's not something we're going to be able to work with you on. But if you do choose to move forward in that direction, there are some potential risks that you're taking kind of in the long term, whether it be somebody that's willing to, move forward with that. Are you getting, really good workmanship? And if not, then, if you do have an issue down the road, are you going to run into, trouble with insurance?
Yeah, this is a super interesting one because do you see it very often, Matt, where like you're selling a home and there's a flag saying the renovation wasn't done to code or permitted or anything?
In the city file, no.
No,
not
so
generally.
I went to finance one for a client about a month ago and it was on title that there's like a bylaw infraction. So I looked into it and said, asked the agent, hey, what's the bylaw infraction? Oh, they did some work that wasn't permitted.
And they had like a stop work order or something?
Yeah, so the neighbor complained.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, bad, you gotta have good relationships with your neighbor.
Yeah.
I don't know to the extent of the work that was being done,
yeah.
but we cannot finance that property until they finish it and bring it up to code. But now they have a bylaw infraction stating that, work's been complete. So you got to start all over again.
Yeah.
Which is like so costly. you know?
I think it depends on the situation. I see a lot of houses that obviously were not.
Yeah, like
We're done
it's
without
changed.
Well, and like it also just looks like shit. So like it's obvious that there's no permit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that I've seen, like you look at the city file or pull all the papers on it or pull in technical safety BC and there's no word of it. So obviously it was not a permit either.
So where's the liability fall? Like if your client's going to buy something and
Well, on the PDS, so on the property disclosure statement, you have to
they sign off on
to
it.
say, are you aware of anything done without a permit?
Yeah.
Right? So if, a lot of times, yes, we did X, Y, and Z without a permit. So then the buyer just has to know that. But then that might come an issue with your lender at that point.
Yeah,
Or-
that has
or
definitely
insurance.
come up. Yeah, and insurance.
What's that?
Or insurance.
Yeah, insurance. Yes.
But I guess so if you buy that property and something comes up later on down like 2 months from now, it's like, well, we accepted the PDS, so you're on the hook for it.
Think about something like a non-legal suite. Those are basically all by definition not permanent.
Yeah.
You're still buying houses. You're still financing them based on the rental income.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's just a case-by-case basement or a case-by-case situation.
Or basement, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to it than that. But yeah, like a mobile home, we basically have to have an electrical inspection to even sell one, to even list one.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I would not be surprised to see that come into regular houses too, but
Yeah, easiest way to get sued as a real estate agent, eh? List a mobile home.
yeah, as a real estate agent, yes,
Yeah.
there's a lot to them. Yeah. So yeah, but we do see this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, last on the list, rush in the final walkthrough.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So I'm gonna take like 5 days with you then. That's what you're telling me.
yeah. Well,
Turn off all the lights, get the side light on the drywall,
Yeah.
and then you get to see every interaction. You see those videos where the wall looks like perfect, and then you do
Yeah.
that light, it just looks like a monstrosity.
it's understandable whether it's a new home or, you've been renovating a space,
Yeah.
the homeowner's going to be excited to move in and they, probably want to put their life back together and not be living in a renovation or a build anymore. But that's one of the things that I always like to kind of take a step back with because, I always say, let us get in there. Let us finish doing our job. Let's make sure that all of the paint touch-ups are completed, that, everything is working. Because once you start moving in, if there's something that we need to, tackle, let's say it is a deficiency, it can make it a lot more challenging. It can also be hard to kind of really get a good grasp on, what is actually left to be done.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I usually say, let's get it finished. Let's be done in the space. And then that way we can be right out of your hair. You can move in, the space is yours. And then we're not, trying to trip over each other for the next, week as we, try to finish up what might have been a day or two's worth of actual work.
Yeah, totally.
I just happen to have sold a lot of new units lately, so I've been doing a lot of efficiency walkthroughs, and like it has been honestly a learning experience for me. Just the different things that you catch. Like one of them we walk through and there's just like a dozen paint issues that need to be fixed and a couple like light switches, like just minor things like that. And then other ones are just like lengthy lists of a lot of stuff that's wrong. I totally agree with deficiency walkthrough to be pretty ruthless when you're doing it.
Yeah. And even kind of from builder's perspective, I always will walk through a project as it's wrapping up. I like to do the final walkthrough myself. And so I'll go through and I try to put myself in the shoes, of the client that's walking through and, looking at those things. Because what I have experienced in the past is it can be great quality, but once somebody picks up on one or two things, one, you can't ever unsee it. And two, you will find more. Mm-hmm. And so a super minor issue can turn into a full repaint if somebody starts looking too closely. Because at the end of the day, a level 4 finish on a wall, when you're standing, away from it, you're not going to see anything. But if you get right up to it with a light and you're inspecting it from 6 inches away, chances are you're going to be able to see the odd deficiency here and there, but it's not actually a deficiency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's dive into our wrap-up questions here. If you could buy any property in the Okanagan in the next 12 months, what would it be?
Probably a building lot. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. We'd,
nice.
my wife and I would really like to build our own place. So
Whereabouts do you want to get one?
I like the Lower Mission area. We'd like something with a view. Whether or not that happens, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. If you could give your 20-year-old self any advice, what would it be?
Probably enjoy the journey and be open to taking some chances here and there. And yeah, just learn to love the process.
Nice. What's your favorite charity or how do you give back?
I like giving back to the people around me. So wherever I can, whether it be a little bit of my time or, if I've got some insight or something like that I can provide, or even just connecting people and, whether it be an introduction or creating a new opportunity for somebody. I like to just kind of build up the community and the people around me wherever I can.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Well, Troy, it's been awesome. How can Taylor or I or our listener help you?
Don't look at me. Yeah.
Oh, I got to help you.
I know the answer. Yeah. Get off my back, man. It'll get done when it gets done.
Honestly, just, give us a follow. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got somebody that's looking to do a project of any sort, we'd be happy to, connect and see if we can be the right fit for them.
Yeah. And mostly Instagram, website.
Yeah. I can give you our Instagram at Froese Co, and our website is the same, www.froesenco.com.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks, man.